Hello, lovelies. Alright. Comments video. Been a while because of issues, but I'm not going back the full, 3 weeks? That would be absurd, especially since I've got a whole bunch of new subscribers here this last little while, probably because of the reviews of new and popular stuff that I've done. Quick introduction. I am James Grim Desborough. I have worked freelance for Wizards of the Coast, Steve Jackson Games, Mongoose Publishing, Cubicle 7 Entertainment, and a whole bunch of other people, and I self-publish under Postmortem Studios, post-mort.com if you want to go and buy my stuff, though you can find me at Drive-Thru RPG and all the other independent outlets that popped up recently. So I've been working in the role-playing game industry for nigh 25 years professionally, and a few more than that amateurishly or semi-professionally. I know my shit when it comes to games, and that's about all that I am confident in. I also write fiction under my own name and a variety of pen names because I write naughty fiction, and I am the house games master for Tabletopless, which combines tabletop role-playing games and adult entertainment, though you'll be happy to know that I don't get naked. I have a secondary channel called Grimstreams, where I run safe for work games, so you can come and watch me run games there if that's your bag. But otherwise, you can find me all over social media. All the links and stuff are below. I do consulting, all sorts, basically. Right, the rest of housekeeping. Ronin, my homage to Bushido with some updated, more modern rules and sensibilities. I'm gonna crowdfund it because I really want it to look really good. So right up to Christmas is not a good time to run crowdfunding, and immediately in the New Year's is not a good time to run crowdfunding. So I'm probably looking at about March. I may dip my toe into Kickstarter instead of Indiegogo. I always used to use Indiegogo because they had less censorship and they accepted PayPal, but that has been less the case in recent years. So I'm thinking about it. If anyone's got any particular experience running crowdfunds on Kickstarter, that would be it would be good to know any tips or anything you've got. And I still can't get my head around social media marketing and advertising, so any assistance with that would also be welcome. I may use the extra time to try and complete at least the second book, because Ronin is envisioned as a sort of 3-book set or series. You've got your more historical bent with magic and monsters kind of at the edges, a second book which will go into all the supernatural monsters and magic and that kind of nonsense, and a third book which would be intended for solo play. So that's what you would get perhaps as a set if I can get all of that done before March when things would kick off. But the point of the Indiegogo or the Kickstarter would be to raise money for more art from more expensive artists. So that's what that would be for. Also, I've got a couple of artists who I have long-standing working relationships with who are perhaps having a little bit of a hard time lately and can do with a nice big payday. So that's why I would be looking into doing that, to either raise money for more art or to recoup costs depending how much I can spend before then. I'm also doing some layout recently for the OGGM. He's got a Halloween kit book, kit magazine, zine, whatever you want to call it, thing coming out, and another Goblins entry in his little series there. It's quite a bit of work. If you know the OGGM, you know why. But I'm happy to do stuff with and for him, because we've all got to support each other more than people have been lately. I've caught up mostly with everything after my computer went Everything seems to be up and running without any problems. Hope I haven't just jinxed it. If I haven't gotten back in touch with you and I was supposed to, and you've stuck with this boring video this long, then get in touch again and remind me, because I did lose some emails and some files like my to-do list. So I've done my best, but I have a memory like a, what do you call it? Like a pot with holes in. Sieve. Memory like a sieve, so I might need a bit of reminding. Alright, on to comments on recent videos. On the Edge Runner's mission kit, Nalethatep's Hamster said, apparently they went with Red's he says 2045, but I'm pretty sure it's 2052 setting instead of 2077, because Mike Pondsmith has always envisioned the cyberpunk world as a series of chapters, each dealing with a specific period, and the time of the Red was next on his list. Unfortunately, Red just doesn't do it for me as a setting or a rule set. I don't like scarcity economics in my cyberpunk, nor am I fond of how streamlining has gutted the interlock system of much of its fun. In 2020, you had characters firing while leaping through the air like something out of a John Woo movie. In Red, it's a case of I stand there and shoot. I was hoping the Edge Runner's mission kit would fix the issues I had with the game, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Maybe we'll get more when a true 2077 sourcebook is released. Until then, I'll be sticking to 2020. So, yeah, I figured that was probably what Mike was about. However, I still think it was a bad decision in terms of marketing and so on. Nobody excited by the computer game wanted to play in the Red. They wanted to play in the world of the computer game. So we've got this weird situation where we've got the current release of the game has nothing to do with the computer game and was unable to use any of the art assets, concept art, cut content and so on from the computer game. And so there's a disjunct in presentation between Red and 2077, and it's not the world that most people are interested in. It would have made and now we've got the Edge Runners and 2077, separate rule books and updates coming along, which is just going to further confuse the market and cause more issues. Probably what they should have done is release the 2077 one and then release the Red one separately as a kind of time setting book. But what do I know? I'm not Maximum Mike. I don't have a multi-million-dollar computer game that I have consulted on. I've done some consultation on computer games, but nothing that big. I didn't really notice the scarcity economics per se in Cyberpunk Red. I'm with you on the way the interlock system has been gutted, particularly when it comes to weapons, because gear is meant to be important in Cyberpunk. And yeah, the fact that things are kind of toned down and made a little bit nastier for you as characters. It's harder to accomplish things and to make your rolls and so on. Plus the way the system now works, hit point bloat, and the vehicle rules just don't work. Yeah, all of those issues. Yeah, Red's got its problems, but I have run part of a campaign of it, and it's a fun enough game if you just kind of let go. But yeah, 2020 is still superior. Rhino Watcher says, I think they know more about timing for a flagship product than you give them credit for. Cyberpunk Edge Runners is producing a second season. I always think you're a bit unduly harsh when it comes to bigger indie games. It also seems obvious you've not gone through the rules for Cyberpunk Red too much, as things you list as rule changes are in Cyberpunk Red. Granted, the layout of Cyberpunk Red makes everything hard to find. It is in the same vein as Cyberpunk 2020, which was very all over the place. 2020 did gather everything together, at least in the later editions, and the GM screen was actually somewhat useful. But no, I have read the other rules, but I think I was trying to come at the review from the position of someone who hadn't necessarily bought into Red. And those sections, when I read them, seemed like clarifications of what's in Red. I still don't think they're particularly fantastic, but there you go. But as I said a minute ago, I did run a campaign for quite some time of Cyberpunk Red, so on Shadow Dark. Sorry, a comment is in the wrong section of my notes. I will have to move it 1 second. I can wait till we get to talking about that. It's very professional, as you can tell. Right, on Shadow Dark, Zotob 1975 says, presumably that's your birth year, same as mine. Says a mediocre RPG without a soul, but which has been able to exploit the marketing and allure for people. Lots of people had a similar sort of opinion, really, that it's mediocre and nothing special, but it was able to exploit friendship networks and the zeitgeist of, support women, support queer people, support blah blah blah, the whole papal indulgence thing. And I think that's what soured a lot of people to it, because there has been a lot of empty nonsense that has leveraged nepotism and identity politics. But the trouble is, you then end up acclimated to that and applying hostility where it doesn't necessarily belong. I don't think Shadow Dark is as empty and hollow as a lot of the papal indulgence RPGs and projects that are out there, and it does have something to it. Also, I don't really understand this kind of hostility to it coming from people who have bought into various OSR games, all of which are rewrites of previous material, whether it's Old School Essentials, Labyrinth Lord, whatever. These are all riffs off the same sort of thing. Where they innovate, perhaps, is in applying some degree of simulationism, whether for genre or history, but that basic rule system, you're not looking for something necessarily radical in terms of rules changes and so on. You're just looking to bend it and shape it to make it more closely fit what you want from it, and this is what's been done here, making it more simple and accessible. So yeah, it's nothing special, but then nor are most OSR products, at least in terms of mechanics, and this is primarily a mechanics book. Also on Shadow Dark, Being Compiled says, how would you adapt to homebrew combat to do cool shit? My basic fix for just about all D20 based RPGs is I apply a -5 penalty to a cool shit action, and then up to +5 perhaps to whatever it is that they're trying to do. So if you try to trip someone over, you make your attack at -5, maybe offset that slightly if you have a weapon that's particularly useful for that. If you succeed, then maybe some sort of opposed strength roll to trip the person up, right? Or if you want to focus everything onto a hard blow, you take -5 to attack, but if you do manage to hit, you do +5 damage, right? Things like that. And that way, the fighting classes, which in most D20 games tend to escalate their attack scores more quickly than anybody else, rapidly that offsets any penalty for doing cool shit, and so they can do cool shit with a better chance of success than someone else. But because you can allow anyone to do cool shit using this sort of quick offhand rule, you don't have the problem that you do in something like, say, Dungeon Crawl Classics, where it's completely ring-fenced to the fighter. It's just in this version, the fighter is much more competent at it, generally speaking, because they have more bonuses with whatever weapons. So, there you go. Venger Satanis says, you stated your bias in the first 45 seconds of your review. Cool, I guess there's no reason to keep watching. Jolt. Yeah, I think it's important to state whatever biases you have, and if that means people wander off, that's bad for the YouTube algorithm, but good for the person watching, so that's my priority, I guess. Salsa Doom says, I was a bit irritated by the success of the game on Kickstarter, mainly because from a distance it just seemed to be more of the gormless virtue signalling that was peaking at the time. Its success was probably a combination of luck and clever exploitation of an opportunity. I've since played one of Arcane Library's modules, Under the Black Rose, and man, it was easy to run. It also resonated well with the female players. A clever designer providing easily usable products to a target audience. And yeah, I touched on that earlier. I think understandably, people have been pissed off by what I call papal indulgence games, where you're encouraged to buy them because of the person's identity or disability or whatever else. And there definitely was a bit of nepotism going on here, but a lot of people in the independent RPG space are just terrible at supporting each other, and I wish that was something I could change, but people are fighting each other too much, unfortunately. Super Dr. Ducky says, liked your review, although I really like Shadow Dark. Wanted to point out that you can do anything you want in the game, tripping, shoving, jumping off a chandelier. The GM will tell you the DC and whether you have advantage or disadvantage, and you go for it. There's nothing in the rules that's stopping you. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anything explicitly calling that out. And I prefer my way of doing it. So, Orticus X says, had Shadow Dark been written, promoted and published by a mediocre stereotypical gaming dork, it would be among other systems not really noticed. Shadow Dark benefited greatly from its creator being female and someone who understands how to market for a specific audience. Kudos to her. For those looking to create in the creative space in general, and I learned this 20 years ago in the band scene, it behooves you to hire an attractive woman to help market your product. It is like night and day in terms of the attention you will receive, and generates the white knight emotions that can help carry it past the content itself. I didn't find it to be a bad system, but neither do I feel it deserves a 5-star rating, for it does very little original, and it's more likened by me to a homebrew system that pulls together parts from various systems to create its own thing. Now, if she focuses on a game world and campaigns and adventures for it, I will warm more towards it. Yeah, it is unfortunate, and that leads to a lot of I'd hesitate to say misogyny, because there are reasons behind it in the social media age for various reasons, not just white knight syndrome. It does seem to be a lot easier in a lot of ways for certain people to succeed, though it does come with a cost. I could lean into some of this papal indulgence stuff. I'm disabled, so, partially disabled, so I could play that up more and try to get the sympathy bucks, but it feels dirty to me in a way it doesn't seem to for other people. So once again, I shoot myself in the foot. George Hoffman says, thanks for the review. I, for one, am glad for the success of any new RPG besides D&D. And yeah, that's something we should all kind of latch onto and think about, I think. Mr. Triceratops says, the problem is, for the longest time, the OSR was behaving like academics, writing poorly laid out papers for peer review. Then Shadow Dark just took their ideas and mass marketed it. It's completely fair, and I think better game designers need to step up their presentation game. Shadow Dark is a fine game, by the way, and I appreciate how she's peeling away new school gamers from Pathfinder and 5e. Yeah, I think it's fair, but I think it's also understandable why people have sour grapes. I can appreciate the functional presentation, but it's also not what I like quite. It did, because of the large font, it did feel like there was less value for money there, which is unfortunate. On to the D&D 2024 Player's Manual review. Chris Hollow says, I see so many videos talking about fixing it. Why are you fixing their product? It's weird. So when D&D first came about, it was the 1970s. Times were tough for a lot of people. Economically speaking, so people were looking for high value, make do and mend sort of products as part of what contributed to its success. And ever since, people have been home brewing and house ruling and making spin-off products right from the beginning. It's kind of punk rock in that way. You make your own shit out of it. And if it doesn't do what people want, or it doesn't do what previous editions did, it's perfectly natural for people to go about fixing it. So why are you not tinkering with it? That's a better question for me. Truffle asks a bunch of stuff, which I've extracted from the rest and will answer in turn. So, firstly, does this mean we ought to expect a 2025, 2026, 2027 edition? I think that's probably kind of what they're thinking about, is that they're just going to continue with what are basically, but not really, the same rules, and then release a new edition. Now, it's been a long time between editions, since 5th edition and 2024 edition. Usual industry standard is about 5 years between editions if you've got a game that's going to keep coming out. When it comes to Warhammer, they do every 3 years, which is too often, I think. So, are we going to see a consolidation and rationalization of their rules every 3 or 5 years? Possibly. Are they going to do away with edition numbering and stick with this by year numbering? No idea, but it wouldn't surprise me. Question 2. Hey, wait a minute. The copyright page view issue. Have they released an OGL or other source license version? Never mind. I just saw SRD 5.2 will be released within weeks of the release of the 2025 Monster Manual in February 2025. Yeah, they always wait. And make you wait a long time until the SRD comes out. Will this SRD come out in time, or will they hog the space for themselves? I don't know. Sales of this one, while they say they're the quickest ever, don't seem to be registering that well. It doesn't seem to be available in as many stores, so they might want to loosen the strings a little bit early so that people can support it and create greater value for money. I don't know. We shall find out. But they say 5th edition stuff is compatible. Will people be able to release stuff under the 5th edition license that kind of, with a little bit of dainty hammering, can fit into the new edition? Maybe. Question 3. AI art, exactly, I think has its place, has its uses, but those places and uses are not in books by the market leader, the largest company that's trying to chase $1 billion of turnover. Yeah, kind of like how crowdfunding was never meant to be used by larger companies as a pre-order system, but here we all are. One of my other comments was about how it's not even remotely medievalist anymore, and Truffle says, you're right, medievalism really has just gone right out the translucent waxed linen covered window. Yeah, and it's not even Renaissance, it's Ren Fair. You know how utterly abandoned from any sort of reality Ren Fairs are these days, so that it feels like it's that. I've got nothing against Ren Fairs per se, but it seems a weird thing to base your baseline RPG on. Truffle asks, what's your take on Free League's The One Ring, or the 5e version of that, please? I think that was Cubicle 7's The One Ring. I've got no interest in D&D-esque versions of Tolkien. I own the Cubicle 7 first edition version of The One Ring, but I've never played it, and I've barely read it, to my shame. I think the totally abstracted mechanics kind of put me off, but I will get to it at some point. Grade Gamer says, Grim, I was a little disappointed you didn't do a straight up review. I've deliberately not read or watched D&D mainstream 2024 Player's Handbook reviews influenced by the Wizards of the Coast gravy train, as I was holding out for less mainstream D&D reviews such as yours. Still an enjoyable watch, sir. Because I couldn't get it until the date of commercial release, and because I was delayed a little due to my computer issues, I just really didn't see the point of doing another straightforward review, which is yeah, many of those are available, though a lot of people do seem to be boycotting this edition, whose opinions I would be interested in. But I hope I gave something of value. I mean, you said it was enjoyable, so hopefully it was both enjoyable and valuable. Julian the Apostate, who is a new subscriber, says, My Farog is my favourite RPG. Unfortunate there. I don't want to annoy you because you're a new subscriber, but you are aware that's one of the few things that is actually written and produced by an actual fascist and a murderer. And there's a lot of rather racist text and subtext in My Frog. I know people say that about everything these days, but in this case, it's actually true. So you might want to rethink that a little. And a blast from the past in my old Forbidden Lands review, Beetlejuice says, many people don't like the Year Zero engine from their experience in 1 or 2 games, but once you realise every Year Zero engine implementation is as different as the theme they simulate, and the only thing in common on these games is the use of a pool of dice, the 6+ threshold, and the push mechanic for a mixed result, you learn it's a great system because it's flexible. This flexibility, the mixed results, and a semi-obfuscation of probabilities is for me what makes the system one of the greatest, followed by Cortex Prime. These are innovative systems, in my opinion, but most people don't want innovation. They want familiarity and nostalgia, or a system they know how to min-max. No, I don't think that's it, and I don't think obfuscated probabilities are a good thing. You should be able to have at least a rough estimate of how likely you are to accomplish something. I also don't think they modify it that much from system to system, and so the problems that I have with the Year Zero engine exist across all the Year Zero engine stuff. And given I'll be reviewing Electric State soon, it's going to rear its ugly head once more. The probabilities are just basically screwed, and while there are rules options to get around that, they are generally presented as optional and not explicit. So adding bonus dice for easy actions and so on, and because it just says use hand wavium for the simplest tasks, you don't really have a good way to calibrate how difficult something is or should be. So the probability mechanics are off. You know, an average person of professional level skill should be able to complete an average task virtually all the time without any issue, but that is simply not doable in the Year Zero engine. So yeah, it has its issues, somewhat similar to the issues that existed in first edition Silhouette, but that's probably too complicated to go into now. Alright, I will see you all soon. Zang. On a crazy whim, I recorded the almost entire 5th edition D&D SRD as an audiobook, and you can pick that up, pay what you want on DriveThruRPG, or you can listen to it on a playlist on my YouTube channel, Postmortem Video.